Hello, Culture Matters Podcast. Boy, am I excited about this episode today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here is a quote just for this episode. There's only one CEO, there's only one leader, and the best organizations are ones where there's an integration of leadership and breaking up of the responsibilities. One person can't do everything. It's impossible. It's impossible. Whether it's scaling or whether it's reorganizing, whether it's just running the business, it's impossible. Alan Whitman, our guest today, our friend from this quote. I love that quote. Former episodes. If you haven't listened to season 36, episode 424, and you're listening now, or season 40, episode 573. Go listen to those episodes. After our episode today, our guest is back, Alan Whitman, the one and only former CEO, Baker Tilly US, advisor, consulting, leader, and high performer coming from of course, the tax and strategy world, but now all more general strategy, vision, leadership, data understanding, execution, and growing businesses. So pay very close attention. Alan, thanks for coming back. I was listening to the last episode and I was going to use this Drucker quote. And then I was heard that. I'm like, oh, that's the one I want to start our show with today. So thanks for coming back.
Well, Jay, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being on your podcast. You have a unique way of delving into topics and just the way you approach questioning and the conversation. It's just a real pleasure to join you. So thanks again and happy holidays to you and your family.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. And actually on that note, right? I just got an email earlier from somebody and they said to me, is January 3rd good, or are you going to still be away? Meaning, like there was an implied belief that I was going to be somewhere other than here with you or somebody else, or me and my wife will be working or something. So, like, I do want your advice on because you've traveled so much over the years, built companies, led companies. What advice do you have us up and comers on how to turn it off? uh, uh, or if that is even a good idea, depending on the season of our business life and trajectory, or like what your philosophies are. So, being that it's the holidays, people are going to listen to this week and be thinking, am I leaving the office at 4 o'clock when everybody
Yeah.
else is expected to leave at 8? Or,
Yeah.
curious in your thoughts around that, right? The holidays and how to approach work and
Yeah. So look, everybody wants to take a break, and certainly recharging your batteries is important. You also have to take into consideration who you are, right? And so, look, the office is a place. Meetings are occurrences. Your profession, your career is a lifelong journey, and nobody should tell you when to do what. And if during the holidays it's a good time to connect, then it's a good time to connect and or debrief. I always find that I'll give you a story. Being a tax guy, as you mentioned, April 15th would come around, and I would I'd be at work on the 16th, 17th, and 18th when everybody else is taking vacation. And I'm thinking to myself, why take vacation when I can just kind of go down to 80% power, still do some work, relax a little bit, not be so pressured, and I'll take my holiday some other time during the year. So I'm not it's not binary. Either you're working or you're not working. It's degrees of concentration, it's degrees of commitment. And so I look, during the holidays, it's nice to slow down a little bit. Sure, there's not as many meetings, of course. There's not as many calls, of course. But I've not had a holiday season in the last 20 some odd years where I've just, turned it off. I don't, I don't operate that well when I just turn it off. I'm always wondering what's going on or what should I be focusing on. And if it's only simply me thinking about some really hard topics, I don't know. Is that work? Yeah, well, I don't. Somebody can define it as work. Somebody couldn't. To me, it's comforting. It's engaging. And so, Jay, do what you want during the holiday season. Whatever makes you happy, as long as your family's happy, your wife is happy, etc. And frankly, an office or a location is a place. That's not
the kids
how
can
work
open the
happens.
gifts after I record a podcast with them.
Well, I don't know if that's
I'm
the right
just
thing to
kidding. I'm
do,
just kidding.
but do a both and, right? Maybe you record a podcast with them as they open their gifts. Anyway, look, I think things should not be in extremes or binary decisions. It's not worth like what is it? Work life integration. I mean,
That's
you
better than the
live,
balance
yeah,
conversation.
you live and you build a career at the same time. So why do you have to be on one versus the other? Why can't you be on both at some at some level? And if you need to take a breath, take a breath. Okay.
Mm. Yeah. How much of the CEO, let's go laser in on the CEOs for a second here, those in that position of being accountable for the organization's results ultimately. In the CEOs that you've interviewed throughout the years and mentored and worked with, is there a common thread of their degrees of intensity or their degree of
Mhm,
intensity or their degree like because the reason I asked this is there was a meme. It was a meme that whenever I say
mhm,
I don't know how,
mhm,
but I don't recall which CEO it was, but it was a guy. He was really going on about leaving the office at 4 p.m. It was a big public company, and shortly after, it was like he was out, and then like the
mhm.
results were really down. It made news, and like,
Yeah,
is there a connection? So I'm curious in your actual anecdotal experience,
yeah, yeah. Great
because you're
question.
like, right, you're
Look,
talking to so many people. That's data. That's
sure
valid.
it is. And I observe, and we'll get to the quote sometime during our time together. The quote that you read, it's a pretty interesting quote. Look, I think most CEOs, most good CEOs are realize that quality is more important than quantity. So working from to 5, working to 11, working to 6, working to 4, working to 3, it doesn't matter what that is, as long as the time is used on quality matters. You can work to 11 and still not do what you need to do. Most CEOs, in my mind, most good CEOs are worried about the company and the people and the strategy, and the results are a result of that. They're an outcome of all the good things you do. And so, if you can spend your time engaging other people and enabling strategy and all that comes with that, the results will come as long as the strategy is a sound strategy and as long as you have the right people in the chairs. And we'll talk about spreading responsibilities, et cetera. You have to have the right people doing the right things. So look, I'm not a big believer in you got to work till 11 o'clock. Look, I'm advising a couple of CEOs that they're constantly telling me how much they work, and frankly, I'm like, I don't care. And two, I think it's wrong to think about it that way. I think it's more about quality and distributing responsibility, so you're not the only one working on on everything, and you're not the one that's over committing because you're going to make a mistake. You're not going to be as effective. I talked to a CEO recently who said, "Wow, I was in New York City and I was being interviewed with a major publication, and we were talking about economy and business." And he said, I loved that, and I wish I just had more time to do that. I led an organization much larger than this organization, and I had plenty of time to do that because I was dividing and conquering. And it was
Mm.
important for me to do that. I enjoyed it. It was important for the organization. So I'm not a believer that quantity is the key to success. I'm a believer that quality is a key to success. So it's people that have to work till 11 o'clock. Yeah, at times, of course. I'm not so sure that that's the right pill.
What if we're gonna? I want to get granular on that. At times, of course. So, are there advice you could tell? What times, right? Like a time of war and a time of peace are different. Is the first thing that comes to my mind. So, like,
Sure.
at what time? Like, if I'm a CEO listening to this and I'm walking to work, and I may or may not have an anxiety disorder right now based on what's
Mhm,
happening in the
mhm.
world and the company. When is it time to go a little bit extra? When is it time to let off the gas?
Well, CEOs are always on, right? Their mind is always moving. Their gears are always grinding about the strategy, about the effectiveness of the organization, about the integration of people, their team, all the, their competitive positioning, all the things that give rise to an organization's success. So your mind is always working. When you're poring over documents or you're poring over a presentation or a project, sure, but that doesn't happen every day. And frankly, I'm a big believer in having people that are going to take things for you and do things on your behalf as a CEO. So you don't need to pour over every chart, every analysis. You've got your colleagues that are going to dive deep, and you're going to look at them as a CEO would from a strategic perspective and as a cause and effect perspective versus analyzing and overanalyzing the details. I can't give you you said war and peace. I can't give you a this or that example of when you hit the gas pedal or you don't. You'll know when that happens. In my experience, it doesn't have to happen every day. It shouldn't happen every day. And if it does, you're either taking on too much work yourself, you're the company's out of control. Maybe there is a time frame where everything is hitting at the same time because of coincidence. Okay, but that's doesn't shouldn't last forever.
So if that's happening and we're responding to it, that could be a symptom of some missed marks in the past.
Sure, sure. Look, I mean, the CEO, again, I've seen a number of them. The CEO that's continually saying, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Well, do you, or do you just not have the right people around the table? Do you need, look, founders, entrepreneurs, and startup founders, they're doing everything. And as organizations mature and grow and mature, you need to systematize the organization. You need to spread the responsibilities. You can't do everything. The topics get so large that you can't be analyzing all the dance floor items, the things in the sausage maker, if you will, and the balcony items that I think I've shared with you, I've talked to you in the past about. It's like upshifting and downshifting, upshifting and downshifting. Eventually you're gonna grind the gears and you're gonna strip the transmission.
I want to talk in the lane of communication. Like, let's say hypotheticals, CEO, they're physically not around for a period of time. And are we looking down on those employed that start like, so for example, like let's say they're physically there every day and there's an implicit influence over the people that see them
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
below their awareness, maybe they stay a little bit later because they're so close to this power source. Then that power source is taken out for whatever reason. Those
Yeah.
people now start leaving earlier. Are they bad human beings, or is it like the proximity? Bad human beings, that's a little aggressive. Are they inadequate for their
Uh,
responsibilities, or are we missing a degree of communication with our words and our writing because our physical presence isn't there? I'm really trying to crack this like
yeah, 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 yeah.
phenomenon that I've observed in like different scenarios.
Well, listen, everything has changed since COVID. We all know that, right? And one of my colleagues, Francesca Ranieri, coined the phrase from proximity to intentionality. It's not from proximity to intentionality. We used to say in
Oh,
public accounting, if the cheeks aren't in the seats, nothing's getting done. If the cheeks aren't in the seats, how many are the cheeks in the seats? If they're not in the seats, then they must be screwing around. They must be not be working. Well, that's not true, as you can see. Just
mm,
because you don't see the person doesn't mean the person isn't working. Having said that, to 2024 and beyond are the years of intentionality in order to connect with people, develop people, uh, encourage people, communicate with people. You need to be intentional. You can't just assume it's going to happen as people pass people in the hallway because people aren't passing others in the hallway. It's interesting you raise this. Your ears must have been burning. I was on a call with a young CPA manager at the firm with him, and I shortly after the call learned he's the downtown CPA and he's on LinkedIn. And he called me and said, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. I didn't know who the gentleman was, Matthew. And we had a great conversation. And we got to this conversation about intentionality. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give you an example of how I was intentional when I was a young associate at Price Waterhouse. I, as the young guy, wanted to be the last one in the office. I wanted to let the partners and the managers leave first. I never wanted to leave before them because I thought
Mm,
it was going to look bad, because that was the day of proximity, cheeks in the seats. If I wasn't pounding on my computer or my laptop, of course I wasn't working, which isn't true. So I had a habit of every day before I left or before 5 o'clock, before everybody's going to start thinking about leaving for the day, I went office by office, every manager, senior manager, and partner. I said, hey, is there anything I can do for you tomorrow? Do you need anything done? Was
wow.
one way to get some work, right? Learning experiences. Is another way to impress the more senior people, brown nose, whatever you want to call it. It was another way to show my commitment. But that was intentional. I got up every day and I went and asked them, John, Sally, Rich, is there something you need done? And I could have gotten the silliest of assignments. You put it all together, and it seemed to work because I became the CEO of a public accounting firm. So something
Yeah,
was right
that
there.
seems like a very proactive, personally responsible thing to do based on your value set and your goal.
Right. And look, it's less, yes, I agree with that. And Jay, that's being intentional. That's not letting somebody come to you. It's being intentional. So to your question, do you think people, this is my paraphrasing, do you think people are lazier or less committed or whatever it is because the senior guys and gals are not in the office? Well, frankly, way back when, the partners weren't in the office anyway. They were out with clients. Now, your direct report was, and maybe your report's report was, yes, you were more so in the office. It's changed. And I think that by virtue of all of the CPA firms, or the great majority, super majority, growing significantly over the last 4 years, it can't just all be price. It has to be volume too. People are working. People are getting things done. And they're actually getting things done more quickly and more efficiently than they ever did
Mm.
prior to COVID, but prior to virtual work. I do think, like I said, 24 and 25 are the years of intentionality. People need to find their intentional avenues for connecting with people, for developing people, for assigning work with people, with working together because they're not in the office. Look, a lot of people are talking about return to work and return to office, et cetera. And I'm seeing it's not going nearly as well as everybody wants, or as the people that have come up with the new way of working want. It's because it's not a trend. It's stuck. It's that's what's happening. I don't think long term it's going to be people in the office 5 days a week, 8 to 5, 8 to 6. I,
I'm
I just
curious if you think there'll be a connection with with rituals, so like event gathering, a ritualistic event oriented, conference oriented, like being more important than the past
I was
as a
just at a
consequence of
conference.
less.
Yeah.
Um,
I was just at a conference last week, Jay, in Denver. CPA.com, the technology arm of AICPA, the for-profit technology arm, puts on an annual conference called Digital CPA, DCPA. I don't, I'm not a very good counter of people by just looking at a room, but it was a huge ballroom with, I don't know, 70 tables, 100 tables. So there was upwards of 1,000 people. That's 1,000 people that are by virtue virtual, and they're willing to connect for the right things, for the right events. They're willing to connect. And so let's let them do it. Let's not force the way it was. Look, at the end of the day, I'm still a believer that the higher ups don't want to be intentional about connecting. They don't. They refuse. They want it to be easy. They want it to be through osmosis. And I know that's a
so
really
what are some of
hard
the
thing.
things that you've seen over your tenure that that influence people to want to be in the office? Like I'll use an example. And this is I've been to all sorts of different I get asked to go to church a lot or different places of worship. I don't even know the different
Mhm.
denominations. And hey, it's the people that ask me, I want to be with them. I want to spend time with them. It's like a nice, so like I want to go because of the people. I don't even necessarily believe in the brand
Mhm.
or
Well,
or the product or service. So like, what are some of the things you've seen in your tenure that lead people to want to be in the office, that lead them to want to go to the physical place of worship and it's interesting.
I think it's the head versus the heart. I think it's the heart connection, the emotional connection. That's what makes people want to be together. familial connection. Look, people think that work is getting done. People know that they're doing what they need to do and they're learning, etc. Many people say that they're not, but the customers of this, the people are like, we disagree. Look, I've never met you. Well, we did meet. We met on a plane, a pretty platonic,
For 2 sec, yeah, two
right?
seconds.
A pretty platonic place, right? We really didn't talk. And then now look, this is the third time I've been on your podcast. And so we've never shared a meal together. So it can be done. It really can.
That's a great point. I actually completely forgot that for a second, like today at least, that we did meet on a plane.
Yeah. Yeah. You were writing your thank you notes very, very, very man in a very manic way, and we got we connected, and it was that. I mean, literally though, Jay, that was for what, 72 seconds. So it wasn't in the office. It wasn't structured. It was a human connection in
Well,
in the
and you know
question.
what? I saw your yeah, I told you I saw your name. And so I always look everybody up on LinkedIn
Yeah.
immediately because
Yeah.
I'm a researcher.
Sure.
I like details. And I was like, this guy knows his stuff. I would love to learn from him and get to know him. Like I was able to look and then draw inferences based on just so you put so much value in the world online. I made inferences and said, you know, I better get to know you because, and this is a mistake that I'm changing. I used to not talk to people on the plane because I was trying to work. I'm always trying to work on the plane. Now I'm being a bit more open culture wise to like meeting
So
people.
there's a word that you just described in so many other words, and that is curious. You're curious. You were curious, and you continue to be. If you say you're a researcher and you're out for information, excuse me, you're curious, which is wonderful. That's fantastic, and that's the best. One of the best qualities of a young professional. Be curious. Your time is to learn. It's like I just told my our daughter, who's a senior at UCLA. Your job in college, yes, is to get good grades. That's the result, but it's to learn. Learn how to learn. Be curious, and when she goes to work next year for the I, honey, your job is to learn as much as you can for if this is you're going to be your career or if it's not going to be your career. Learn as much as you can. It's a building block. So look,
Yeah.
I know people want to find the the points associated with work from in the office or work from home. People are looking for that bright shiny solution, and I just don't think there is one. I think we better
Ooh,
start getting used
I
to it.
actually want your thoughts on this. You know, the last 40 years, you know, people, there's been a proliferation of private investment in the markets and the, you know, unlisted securities, this private equity where I know you're
Yeah,
advising a lot
yeah, yeah,
on that. Well, like, but back in the day, in the world of, you know, management in the you know, the mid 20th century, when it was all kind of coming to the foray, none of that existed, right? It was just the investment banks, like the
hmm
Goldman Sachs I've read books on,
yeah,
and there was this thing consulting, like
hmm
these at the time these guys in suits, you know,
hmm
and eventually, you know, the investment bankers and people from school, right? They gravitate towards these. It's like the zeitgeist of the times.
yeah,
The and now for the investment bankers and all them, they became the private equity guys. They before that they were the consulting guys, then the
yep.
investment bankers, now the private equity guys. I have this feeling, and I'd love to flush this idea with you, that like there is going to be a renaissance to the consulting advisory world as a consequence of this technological like shaking. Because so I just want to explore that with you a little bit. It's like this because think about it, and this is my the proposition here. The private investment, which can add a lot of value to people, to obviously
hmm
people's lives, like that own companies, right? Having building storehouses they would have never had because
Right,
they didn't go public or whatever. But
right.
there's pattern interruption that happens culturally when that happens.
hmm
And there's a lot of money flooding towards these smaller markets.
hmm
And because of technology, like this work from home as an example, I think the expectation of the management of that level of educated uh, management. So in that lower
hmm
market, you have
hmm
less. statistically less educated
Yeah.
CEOs because
Yeah.
not all CEOs are founders, but all founders are implicitly CEOs. So you have less
Yeah.
educated people getting that the money's coming in and they've got to learn the hard way or learn, and they're not going to learn if they got to learn the hard way. So I have this theory that, or speculation that there's going to be a rise, a re-renaissance of the consulting advisory.
Well, it's interesting you say that for on so many levels, Jay. The 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 concept or the phrase from ownership to access comes to mind. And what does that mean? You need to access the subject matter expertise as a founder, as a CEO. You don't need to own it. You don't need to have it yourself. And so accessing it is 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 wonderful because you get the benefit of it. When you say that all founders are CEOs, all CEOs aren't founders, and at the lower end of the corporate spectrum from a size perspective and a sophistication perspective, they don't have the experiences, they don't have the talents that they may need or can benefit from. I agree with that. And so that's why they need to find people in the ecosystem to help them. I've been asked by a number of CEOs to come work with them and their teams because I had the experience of where they want to go. And so I have I've cleared the hurdles that they're clearing. I've seen the obstacles. I'm not going to see everything, of course. I'm not going to know everything, but I certainly are going to give them an advantage. And I've worked with many in 24 that see the value in accessing somebody that has had the experiences that people like I have had, whether it's knowledge base, whether it's activity based, meaning I was in the chair, so to speak, of running a firm and building a firm, and that has become mainstream with the conversations I've had, and it's very fulfilling for me to speak with people that are just hungry as can be to leverage they don't need to do everything I say, and I'm not telling them what to do. I'm giving them things to think about. I'm giving them concepts and points of view that they might not have had on their own.
And
And whether
the,
it's a C-level person in a $500 million firm, or it's the founder CEO of a $30 million, $20 million manufacturer, they still can make use of the subject matter, intellectual capital.
I'm curious. Here's another word picture to throw out there. Too much money chasing too few deals in the private sector, and then it's hot potato. So the first strategic partner might be unbelievably amazing. They came in before you got there. They lower the cost. They capitalize. They're acting out of vision.
Hmm.
So and the founding operational principles are excited because now their personal balance sheet is
Hmm.
capitalized.
Hmm.
But when they passed, instead of going public or a competitor buying, maybe they pass the potato to the next. Now I'm doing air quotes. Strategic
Hmm.
partner.
Hmm.
Each time that happens, my intuition, it's more of the the risk of bureaucracy, politicalization grows.
Well,
The
sure,
like
sure.
the potatoes being passed. So people like yourself, the world that we're in becomes even more important.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's many layers to what you're saying. One, as organizations mature, they evolve and they become more systematized, they become more organized, they mature. And that would happen whether they are investor led, if they were continually to be a private company. It's just a matter of the speed in which they adopt these new ways of doing things. Look, the founder organization is a very unique and admirable organization. And when they become sponsor led, they're going to try to organize them and systematize, not organize them, meaning uh, um, uh, from a labor perspective and unions, but from a systems perspective and maturing the organization versus all things freedom within a wide framework. I see that, and look, I see these companies need advisors because anytime a corporate sponsor comes in, they want the target company to do more faster because they've got a window. It's not, this is my life's work, like a founder says. It's, this is my hold period work,
Yeah,
says the financial sponsor. So they've got 3 to 5 years. And so you need people, and it's interesting. I'm an investor and an advisor to a company by the name of Kinavic. It's Kinavic with a K, Leadership Acceleration, Kinavic, Kinavic. And we work with C-level execs, professional services execs on leadership acceleration, enabling partners and leaders to achieve more. And we do this quite often in the PE setting where the PE firm is backing the company because, again, they've got a hold period. They want you to grow faster. They want you to cross-sell or cross-serve more. They want you to improve margins. They want you to do much more than you were doing when you were private.
so is it because the speed of the culture, the speed of tech, the speed of everything, the speed to capital, we have to bring the MBA to we have to bring the classroom to, we're like Charles Darwin. I mean, we need to get in there and look at the beak.
I think yeah. I don't think it's technology. I think the financial sponsors. I know the financial sponsors have a short period of time where they need to have an oversized return to their investors, and 5 years is a short period of time to make a big 2x, 3x, 4x. And so the smart fund the sponsors and the smart portfolio companies are hiring people that were sitting in the seat that have experience doing the things that the company will now need to do, accessing them in their intellectual capital experience in order to be able to execute very in a very disciplined way and a very quick way.
It's like having that tutor in college
Yeah,
versus being in the classroom is
right.
going to take more personal responsibility and maybe more time, but they're
Yeah,
investing. It's like when we have we have kids, they're going to get that chess tutor, they're going to get that culture tutor. That's
yeah.
not just me
Right,
annoying about
right,
culture.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, let it
right.
hear it for this guy, and it's going to just lead to that GPA going up.
I think the most
Fascinating.
important,
Yeah.
I think where I see huge value, and there's been a lot written about this, the people that not only understand what to do, but how to do it, or they actually did the work. They don't, do as I do as I did, not as I say,
Interesting. Yeah.
right? The old comic where the consultant comes in and says, "Here's your plan," and they say, "Well, can you start on Monday to implement?" And they say, "We're not going to implement this. We just came up with a plan." The real value is when you get people that actually lived what they're saying and can help the pupil incorporate it and enable it.
I'm excited about the small business in the next 10 years for these reasons, and the fact that I think in the past, when things are more siloed and insulated, the access that those entrepreneurs had to information were frankly the self-help kind of like false profit world, like which is just kind of just little part, like little granules of insight and truth, and just like a lot of ideology. So I think it's a burgeoning market, a massive growth opportunity.
Well, I think you're right. And sometime in the first half of 25, I'll come back on your podcast to share with you what I'm doing. And effectively it is a new business platform, advisory platform for small and medium-sized businesses. So just give me a few months. We're in the early stages of building out the platform, and let's say towards the second half of the first quarter of
Wow.
25, we'll come back on and we'll share with you the exciting news of what we're doing.
I can't wait. In closing, I want your thought on this original quote, right? There's only one CEO, there's one leader, there's only one leader. And the best organizations are ones where there's an integration of leadership and breaking up of the responsibilities. One person can't do everything. It's impossible. It's impossible. Whether it's scaling or whether it's reorganizing, whether it's just running the business, it's impossible.
Well, I lived that, and thankfully we were very successful in spreading the responsibility across the organization. Look, as you get larger, there's just so many more things to do, and if you're the one making every decision, if everything runs through the door of Jay or the door of Alan, you're going to hold people back. You don't have enough time to give the time necessary to your leaders and your up and comers. So this isn't your company, you're just leading the company. And so you can do it. It's just not going to be done very well, and it's going to be a horrible experience, not just for you, but for everybody else, or and for everybody else. I've experienced some assignments where the CEOs have been the judge, jury, and executioner. I mean, every decision is made by them, and it slows things down. And more importantly, it slows down the development of people that could be rising to new levels of responsibility and achievement. And so it's something that leaders need to be comfortable with letting go and trusting. And it's the old adage of slow down to speed up, right? Everybody says I got to go fast, fast, fast. Well, if you slow down and you organize and reorganize and assign, you actually will be able to go faster. It's like the old. I use this in some of my consulting assignments. Do you want to be an individual contributor, or do you want to be a leader of leaders? One to one or one to many? And one of the challenges that I've seen in professional services is that, good and bad, they'll take the people that are the individual contributors out of being an individual contributor to lead others. Now, you got to give them the support. You've got to help them. If they can teach and mentor four others, well, now you have five individual contributors versus just one. So done the right way, it's it's a gem, and the success is significant. So to me, it's not about me, it's about the strategy, and the strategy deserves many people executing it. One of the things I loved in my work, my international work, is when I heard the way people in England referred to clients. Here in the United States, for good reason, people say my client. This is my client. And I know why they do that. They define themselves by the clients they had looked after, et cetera. And in the UK, the first time I heard this was about 10 years ago, I heard somebody say, this is the client I look after. So it's not my client, it's the company's client. I'm looking after this client because it's the client's company. It's the company's client. I just thought that was brilliant. And so that talks to me about we versus me,
Mm,
an abundance point of view versus a scarcity point of view. And again, it holds true with leaders that are holding every decision to themselves. That's
mm.
not sustainable. It's unsustainable. And I would advise everybody that's in the seat of being a CEO to try to find as many leaders as they can that they can develop, so that the CEOs can start spending all their time on the most important things of their position: people, customers, and strategy. Those three things.
Alan, this is amazing. If you're listening to this episode, please go listen to episode 424, season 36, season 48, episode 573. Very different conversations. This continued master class. Alan, I can't wait till when you come back next. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Culture Matters podcast. Please leave us a review in the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Jay.